Delighted to be here in the wonderful Trinity College Dublin talking to nature expert Brendan Dunford, founding member of fantastic organisations including the Burren Bio Trust and co-founder of Farming for Nature and Refarm. Brendan, can you talk to me a little bit about why you started these organisations?
A mixture of kind of opportunity and I suppose anxiety or anxiousness to do something about some of the issues which I feel are important, not just to me but to the world at large. So yeah, I'm from a farming background. I grew up in a little farm in County Waterford, and the farm was my playground. It was where we worked, from where we ate. It was everything. It was an amazing foundation. And later on in life, then I was lucky enough to arrive in a place called the Burren and work for 3 years there on a research project with farmers. And I suppose those experiences and many others got me thinking about the power of farming to deliver for nature and for the environment and for human nutrition and well-being and health when it's done right. So my perspective is that farmers are a huge resource in addressing our climate and biodiversity challenges. We've never properly mobilised that resource, and I think they're there to be mobilised if we create the right incentives. So most of the work and the projects that I'm involved with are supporting landowners, particularly farmers, to do what we need done on behalf of nature and our environment, while also continuing to produce food and sustain our cultural heritage.
Right. And when you said you were working for a number of years on the Burren originally, what kind of issues were you seeing with nature that perhaps would be relevant to the wider countrywide of Ireland or maybe even Europe stage?
Yeah, so the Burren is this magical landscape. I mean, there's nowhere like the Burren, I have to say. You can say what you want about any other part of Ireland, but the Burren's got this incredible depth and diversity of archaeology, geology, ecology. It's just amazing, and there's a great cultural layer to it as well. So I just love the Burren, and it was a privilege for me to spend 3 years doing a PhD in the Burren at the time, trying to explore the relationship between farming and the environment. And at the time, this is back in the late 90s, farming was considered to be a very destructive force, because at the time there's a lot of land reclamation, reseeding, fertilisation, which is very negative for the Burren and for farming in general, for our landscape in general. But actually, when I got talking to the farmers and started getting on my hands and knees and looking at the flora and looking at the management, what I found out after 3 years was that actually without farming, the right type of farming, we also lost biodiversity. So taking farmers out of the equation, some people think that'd be the way to go, but that's a disaster for places like the Burren, because you lose all your species-rich grasslands and you get something far poorer. So too much farming, and when it becomes too intensive, it's destructive. But the lesson from the Burren was we need the right type of farming. It's not that we don't need any farming, we need the right type of farming for food security, but also to maintain some of our best habitats, in particular grasslands.
Could you talk a little bit more about species-rich grasslands? It's kind of been news to me how important they are, and perhaps news for a lot of people who might think that planting trees is the way to go. And obviously, it's not the only thing to do, but I'm beginning to understand that there's more to it. So
yeah, the grasslands, we tend to think grassland green monoculture, but actually that's the wrong type of grassland. That's kind of heavily fertilized monoculture of ryegrass, but actually species-rich grasslands are the most phenomenal habitat in terms of diversity, plant species diversity. In the Burren, I was getting maybe up to 50 different plant species per square metre, which is phenomenal. Each one of those plants has a function, supports an insect maybe, or a higher level animal. So the diversity within those grasslands is really phenomenal. What's most significant, I suppose, nearly about grasslands is how quickly they're disappearing. We're losing our grasslands all the time because they're very easily improved, fertilized, reseeded to become more productive in the conventional sense, and we're losing that biodiversity. So they're probably one of our most endangered and important habitats, and we tend to completely overlook them.
Right.
So they're vitally important. They're beautiful. They're full of sound, colour, smells.
And birds.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do we help farmers? And perhaps you might talk about some of the organisations that you're involved in and the support that they're giving to farmers to actually help restore and preserve these important habitats.
Well, how long do you have? Because there's lots of projects that we've got going on. But like a lot of the stuff that I do, and there's a group of us. I mean, I'm just one of many. There's some amazing farm leaders like Michael Davin and the Barn, and scientists like Sharon Power. But anyhow, just to kind of paraphrase, we spent 13 years working with farmers on the Burn and on a project called the Burn Program. So it's based on a 3-year research project called Burn Life, which is funded by the European Commission. And what we did under the Burn Life Research Project was develop a blueprint for how best to farm the barn in a way that enhanced biodiversity, improved water quality, but also continued to produce good food and delivered an income to the farmer. And then we got funding from the Department of Ag and National Parks to roll those findings out in what was called the Burn Program. And for 13 straight years while that program ran, we were able to show an incremental improvement in the environmental health of the burn every single year. Now, we paid about €1 million a year, but the results, the benefits for biodiversity were massive.
Yeah, so quite low cost.
Yeah.
And incredible results.
But to answer your question about how it all comes down to three things: the pocket, the head, and the heart. If we want to motivate farmers to do more for nature, it's about the pocket, the financial piece, the head, like how to, where's the advisory support, and the heart. You have to kind of really believe in it. So in the Burn, we developed this amazing results-based payment system. So the more biodiversity delivered, we did a rapid assessment, then the more money you got paid. So there's an incentive, not to clear away those nice species grasslands and have more cattle, but actually have a nice number of cattle and have lots of species, and that really enhanced your income. The second part, the head, is we took away all the paperwork. The farm plans at that stage and reps were like a telephone directory, to completely unreadable. So we took out everything that didn't need to be there. We were left with one page, a map, and a plan, and that was it. No paperwork. We processed all the payments, kept things really simple so that the farms could keep on farming. And we had a local office to provide that service for our farmers. So if we can take that administrative burden away, farmers can really deliver. The third piece then, and this is the really hard piece, is about the heart. It's about getting farmers on board with this. Farmers are very sympathetic to nature, but they're having to run the business. And right now, I think a lot of them feel oppressed and feel being blamed for everything. So trying to flip that around. So in the Burn, we started to realise, listen to farmers, that they felt like that nobody was listening to them. So it was all about doctor this or this expert or that politician telling farmers what they should or should not do. Whereas farmers actually tend to listen to each other, to their peers. They tend to respond to positive messaging, and they tend to respond to language which is more accessible than we often use when we're talking about nature. So we did tons of stuff to try and engage farmers and celebrate farming. One of them was the Burn Winter Weekend, where we have a huge get-together, and one farm family brings their cattle up on to the hills of the Burn in wintertime, celebrating an ancient tradition. And this is really about celebrating what farming brings to our society, not just food, but culture and heritage and landscape. But another little project we started off back then was where we had an annual award ceremony for those farmers who delivered most for nature within that year, celebrating these farmers as being the leaders, the real epitome of what it means to be a great farmer. And that worked so well for us because the farmers felt so proud of what they'd achieved, and their peers kind of paid attention to it, that we approached years ago Board BA to scale this to a national project, and we call it Farming for Nature. So every year now we go around across Ireland and identify farmers, large and small, male and female, organic and conventional, who are really great exponents of delivering great food, but looking after nature and contributing to their community. And over the last 5 years, we've identified over about 120 of these Farming for Nature ambassadors right across Ireland, and they are amazing. They're the model farmers in my mind. They're inspirational. They're really committed to what they do, and they're the heroes, not the scientists or the policymakers or people like me. They're the people who do it day in, day out, and deserve to be rewarded and acknowledged for that. So with those ambassadors, we harvest their knowledge. We produced a book called the Farm for Nature Handbook to share their knowledge. We have a lot of farm walks where they can influence and inspire other farmers to farm for nature. And we've got another little project within that called the Horse's Mouth. And the Horse's Mouth is about getting the message directly from source. So we pay some of our ambassador farmers to visit other aspiring farmers who want to do more for nature. Just have a chat. This is what I tried, you might try that. Or this is the kind of stock I use, or this is where I put my ponds, maybe you'd like to do something there. So it's a lovely way of rewarding the Farmer for Nature ambassadors, but also sharing their knowledge on a one-to-one basis with other farmers.
And they get paid.
And they get paid, and that's really important.
Yes.
They're professionals, they're
Yeah.
service providers, and they get paid, and we always pay our farmers for what they do. A lot of our work is voluntary. I volunteer with these, but it's so important that the farmers
Yeah.
are paid, that they're recognised as being professionals, service providers. You know.
Oh, great. And you've talked before also. I love that the horse's mouth. I think that's fantastic. But good name. But you've also talked before about the Hare's Corner, which is such a lovely image. But perhaps you could talk a little bit about that, what that is.
At this stage, I hope our listeners aren't having to write down a list of different stuff, because there's lots of products, but they're all complementary, to be honest with you. So the Hare's Corner is a lovely expression from the west of Ireland, all about that piece of ground where you couldn't plough, or you couldn't get into fertilizer, you couldn't, farm too intensely. Maybe the corner of a field or the bottom of a slope or a bit of wet ground. So you didn't farm it too intensively, and you left it for nature, and it became a sanctuary for wildlife, and they called it the Hare's Corner. So that was the expression. So we borrowed that idea about space for nature, and we developed a little project through the Burn Trust, a charity which my late wife and I founded about 20 years ago. And we applied for an EIP. My colleague Pransley filled out the application. We got some funding from the Department of Ag to test this little idea. So what we did was we started in County Clare, and we offered landowners, so farmers, community groups, men's sheds, private landowners, support in the form of microfunding or advice on creating their own Hare's Corner. Now, it could be a pond, it could have been a little pocket of woodland, it could have been an orchard. And we've added a few measures on since, like a plan for nature. And the response is phenomenal. So we're at about 7 counties across Ireland now, where there's well over 1,000 people involved year on year, creating thousands of these Hare's Corners right across Ireland. Little gifts back to nature, little ways of doing your bit to address the biodiversity crisis and feeling empowered by it, moving on then to the other actions. But it's a great gift to nature, because the ponds and the little pockets of woodland and the orchards, these are just such beautiful habitats in terms of your own sense of purpose and well-being. So we have lots of landowners and farmers and community groups creating their own Hare's Corners now. We can't keep up with demand. So we've moved on for it to become a fully fledged project, which is reliant on public funding from the National Parks and Wildlife Service, and private funding then from various investors who want to do something for nature. So it's a great way of making things happen on the ground, the Hare's Corner.
And is that part of Refarm, or how does the Refarm come into all of this?
So you keep asking me questions. Refarm is another project. So just to give you a bit of background to Refarm, so we worked in the Burn, as I said, for 13 years on the Burn programme, and that then was succeeded by Acres, which is a national scheme. But we stood back from Acres, and we decided to look at maybe new ways of supporting farming for nature at ground level, because we're very reliant on public funding like CAP or the Farm Plan Scheme that National Parks have. We figured maybe there's an opportunity for other investors in nature. So Refarm, we came up with this idea. A great colleague and friend of mine, Anke Heidenreich, who's got a background in financial services and investment. So we kind of got together, and Trinity College Dublin, where we are today, came on board as our research partners. And the idea there is that we take private sector funding from businesses across Ireland. We use that funding then to create space for nature on farmland in Ireland. So if you're a farmer involved in Refarm, we've got 50 farmers in our pilot year this year. We provide you with advice and funding to create some habitats on your land. It could be woodlands or hedgerows, or for ponds or grasslands, restoring grasslands. And once you create or enhance that habitat, we'll come back next year and we'll do a quick assessment, and we'll reward you for the condition of that habitat. So it's kind of like investing in nature. The farmer and the investor, the funder, invest in nature and the ongoing services that nature generates for society. Because if you're a farmer, your land is your productive asset. If you're taking some land out to create a pond or a piece of woodland, that's a loss of income for you. So we're going to reward that farmer for the services generated. So I think it's a nice model. A lot of companies are going to be obliged to do something for nature, and we believe that farmers are the ones who can deliver that service for them. It's also a bit of a play on the term rewilding, which is so popular at the moment and has a place, definitely has a place, but I think farmers want to feel involved rather than not. So it's a good way of bringing farmers into the whole notion of restoring nature on their land.
Have you any thoughts on rewilding? You brought it up there. Any?
It depends on what it is, to be honest.
Yes.
It's kind of poorly defined, but I think in some places it can be really powerful. It's allowing nature to space to regenerate itself. I mean, I think in Ireland, our farmers and the culture of agriculture, if you like, is so strong. That's going to be the main
Yeah,
way to make change.
70%
Yeah,
of, I think, the land is
Ireland's
under,
farming.
is it?
and
Yeah.
some sections of that farmland, maybe natural recolonisation or rewilding is ideal. But in general, our model is working with farmers to continue to create great food, but also to look after nature and contribute socially as well. I think that's, to me, the sweet spot.
Yeah.
Rewilding then is another important aspect on some farms, but I wouldn't personally like to see farms been taken out of commission and
Yeah.
rewilded fully, because I think we lose a lot in that as well. But as part of the bigger picture, I think it's great.
And are you seeing interest internationally in what we're doing in Ireland on the program that you ran in the Burn program on the Hare's Corner? All these ideas, are you getting interest?
We're getting a lot of good positive energy from all over the place, to be honest with you. Most important from our farmers, and that's, to me, that's the key stakeholder. And the farmers really love to be part of the Burn program and love being part of Farm for Nature too. But yeah, the Burn Light project, one of the best, was co-winner of the best light project of all time in the nature category. That was about 5 or 6 years ago, which is fantastic. We've been over and back to the Commission promoting the notion of result-based payments, which is now kind of getting traction in Europe. And yeah, all the other projects then are more national. Mind you, Farming for Nature, which we set up here in Ireland, has been adopted by colleagues in Northern Ireland, Lithuania and Austria. And later today I'm going on a field trip to Lithuania to join Farming for Nature ambassadors from those 4 countries for a bit of
That's
a
amazing.
bit of a
That's
gathering.
very good.
It's great. Yeah.
So just wondering, I mean, all these wonderful ideas you've talked about, if you were to say to, you know, a farmer or a landowner listening, what 3 suggestions would you have for ways, simple ways to improve nature on their farm or land? If you had to pick 3, I know that's probably impossible to answer, but
It is, but like we have often asked this of our Farm for Nature ambassadors, what's the single most impactful thing you've ever done for nature on your farm? And the outstanding thing is, and this has been borne out by evidence subsequently, is create a pond. A wildlife pond is the most powerful thing you can possibly do for nature. It just draws in a whole new world of wildlife to your farm.
yeah,
But not only that, it just gives you a sense of peace and joy. I have 3 ponds at home myself now. 2 of our ambassadors are at 20 plus ponds. Tom Early and Kim McCall, there seems to be they'll have no land left if they keep going at this rate. But they love them and they're just so powerful. The second thing then, I think, are hedgerows, and it's really looking after the hedgerows that we have, letting them flourish rather than kind of cutting them back too bare. Let them flourish because they provide food, shelter, and networks, corridors that through which wildlife can travel. They're one of our greatest natural assets, these networks for nature. So looking after your hedgerows or creating new ones, I think, if we'd have lost. And with new ones, don't plant a monoculture hedge of whitethorn. Fill it up with every species, like lots of different species. I think.
what would you put in it?
Oh, there's great species, like I love spindle, I love gelder rose, holly is a great tree, elder, there's any number of them, large and small, so put a lot of diversity in. They don't have to be stock proof, we have wire and stuff to do that now, but fill it up with lots of different species. Some of them will take better than others, but you'll end up with a really diverse hedge. And it's a very simple thing to do, but it's the linear nature and the connectivity. So if you're putting in a new hedgerow, use it to join up existing habitats on your farm. That's really good.
That's good.
The third one then is like going back to the grasslands. Grasslands are just so beautiful, and they're not, it's not that complicated. What you really need is patience. So if you've got a bit of lawn or a bit of current grassland, the best thing you can do is let it flower during May, June, July, and then toward the end of the summer, harvest off the grass So cut it and take it away, because that's a bunch of nutrients right there. So what you want is nutrient poor soil, because the nutrient poor soil will allow lots of different species to exist, whereas if it's very fertile, one or two species will just dominate. And one nice little trick, if you want to sort of fast track that process, and if you don't have a good seed bank, there's a little plant called yellow rattle, the meadow maker they call it, but it's a semi-parasitic plant. So if you get some seeds of yellow rattle and introduce it to your lawn, if you can get it to take, what that does is it parasitizes the grasses in the lawn and weakens them and allows space for all these other wildflowers to kind of come in. So start, even if you get a square meter of grassland coming in, that's brilliant. I'd be very wary about buying these wildflower seeds. A lot of it is junk. Yeah. It depends on where you get it, mind you, but a lot of it is stuff that doesn't really belong here at all. So much better if you can collect seed locally for your trees and for your grasslands and introduce it in that way, and be patient. It doesn't happen overnight.
Well, Brent, thank you so much. And if people want to learn more, where do they go? Where's the best resource to go? Is it to go to Farmer for Nature? Would you the website?
It depends on the user. So if you're a farmer or even a grower, we've got this beautiful handbook with contributions from 50 farmers, including spectacular illustrations from one of our farmers called Clyde Bright. So that's a really good single thing to have. If you go to the Farm for Nature website, there's about 100 videos now, loads of podcasts from farmers, directly from farmers, and some of the stories are just phenomenal. They're so inspiring. If you're interested in creating ponds or orchards or woodlands on your own piece of land, go visit the Hare's Corner. There's lots of how-to resources there, little videos as well, different things like that. And then there's other little projects. I might plug the Hare's Corner with the Heritage Keepers, which is another project of Burnville Trust, where as a community Cooper school, you can go on a learning journey about your place and then get a little micro grant to take action to enhance your place. So burnville.com will bring you to a lot of those resources. And refarm.ie, that's just starting to develop, so we're not promising anything yet, but we're hopeful that that'll turn out to be a really powerful project as well. Refarm.ie.
Oh, Brendan, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today, and I'm inspired. I hope anybody listening and watching will feel the same. So thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Christine. Pleasure to be here with you.